We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I'm Mark Angelides, and we're continuing our conversation with longtime host of this here radio show and Liberty Nation's senior political analyst, Mr. Tim Donner. Now, Tim, we've just been talking specifically about Stephen A. Smith and his unlikely, and I call it an unlikely bid for the White House because the betting markets have him at 40-1 at present. And I'm sure that the more he opens his mouth and gets out there on the campaign trail, those odds will only lengthen. But yes. Who do we have? I say we. Who are we looking at in terms of the what kind of front bench the Democratic Party has? Because as you rightly pointed out, if Stephen A. Smith is the contender everybody's talking about, what does that say about the rest of the bench?
So what you're actually asking is, who are all the candidates that Stephen A. Smith is sure he could beat?
Yeah, exactly. Those guys and gals.
He said that. And by the way, he said, I don't really want to run, but there's so many people that are asking me and pleading with me to do it that I have to consider it, which I've heard from many a politician over the years. So he's got that part of politics down anyway, that I'm being drafted. I have no choice but to run. But in terms of the legitimate Democrat office holders, I think Gavin Newsom is such damaged goods now. The outflow of people from California to other parts of the country tells a story, really, that the last few years have been the first ones where California has lost population rather than gained it, because it was always considered a paradise and a dream of many people to move there because of the weather and everything else. He's got a horrendous record on almost every front, except maybe DEI, minority hiring, and that sort of thing, and expanding the bureaucracy in California, but they run massive deficits. There is no fiscal restraint. And, he is the perfectly coiffed candidate that you would sort of, if you had to design the ideal candidate from scratch, if artificial intelligence was going to create the best looking candidate, it would be Gavin Newsom.
Don't get me started on conspiracies here about Skynet and sending back a cyborg to shape politics.
But if you were trying to create the perfect looking female candidate, that might be Gretchen Whitmer, who's very attractive and has, served 2 terms in Michigan. And it's obvious that she's got ambitions because she went to the White House, even though she demanded not to be photographed and held up a piece of paper in front of her face saying, don't photograph me. God forbid I be associated with Donald Trump. But the point is, she went to the White House probably to show that she can reach across the aisle, which is what people are looking for. But she did something in 2024 that I don't think she can ever recover from, when she did a mock communion with some sort of left-wing activist where she was mocking Catholics and really all Christians. And it was to me, I've seen politics for 60 years, but that one was really shocking. It's only one thing, but I think that would be used by the Republican the same way they used the comments by Kamala Harris about transgender surgeries for people in prison. And it would be devastating to her. You've got Josh Shapiro.
Tim, could I jump in on that? Something's just occurred to me here. But also holding up the binder in front of her face like a 2-year-old playing peekaboo. I think that picture will be the fulcrum point of that really derails what she's doing. And in the same way that for Donald Trump, him with his fist raised and blood pouring down the side of his face, that image, as far as I'm concerned, that's what won him the election. And there are certain moments, and I think for Gretchen Whitmer, that was the moment on which her political career will ultimately turn, and it might be a little too soon. She may do many more weird and bizarre things before it comes time to run, but I think that's it. Sorry, so you were saying about Josh Shapiro.
Well, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, has been successful and popular in the Keystone State. He's considered a more moderate Democrat who doesn't really kowtow to the far left the way the rest of the party seems to have done over these last years. But let's be honest, being Jewish, I think he's got a problem politically. And I'm just saying it outright because, especially in the Democratic Party, we know that they dance with anti-Semites.
Yes.
We know that it's likely, or somewhere between possible and likely, that Josh Shapiro was not selected instead of Tim Walz because of the fact that he's Jewish and because Kamala Harris and the rest of them were afraid of their far left base, that they'd be upset. So in terms of his credentials, I think Josh Shapiro is in a good position, but I really don't know whether in the Democratic Party, I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't know that they would support a Jewish presidential nominee.
There's a very good, I think you're absolutely right, that there's enough of a margin of people who would vote against Shapiro because he's Jewish and because he is supportive of Israel.
Yes.
It would, I mean, I think that's the key thing, actually, that he's supportive of Israel rather than, for example, Bernie Sanders is Jewish, right?
Yes.
I hope
yes.
I've got that
no,
right.
Yes.
I think he is. I think he is.
Yes, he is. But he's also an uber progressive.
Yeah.
And Shapiro is not. He's insufficiently progressive to overcome his background, I think, with the far left. But, Shapiro is also, this is what I call a sister soldier moment. Somebody in the Democratic Party has got to step up like Bill Clinton did when he talked about the extremism of Sister Soldier in 1992. And it convinced a lot of people that he wasn't a crazy lefty. Somebody, and perhaps it can be Josh Shapiro, needs to step up and say, enough with this radicalism, enough with throwing firebombs in Tesla dealers, enough with anti-Semitic protests on campus. Somebody in the Democratic Party needs to do that. He could be the one to do that. And another guy who could do that is Andy Beshear.
Yeah.
And just the fact that Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, is wildly popular and has won 2 terms as governor as a Democrat in a bright red state. I mean, to me, he's the most attractive of the candidates, at least in theory. And I think there's good evidence that he does plan to run because he's starting to make TV appearances and comment on Donald Trump. He did an MSNBC interview over last weekend in which he was critical of Trump. And so he may be positioning himself as well. And I don't know that you could turn away from a guy who's so popular that he can be highly approved of as a Democrat in a heavily Republican state.
Yeah, I wonder, because as we're well aware, the primaries aren't or haven't been for the Democratic Party an entirely open affair, and there's always fingers on the scales. And while I completely agree with you that Andy Beshear and Josh Shapiro, they both have the ability to cross over in certain states, important states, that will make a difference in a presidential election, and they could pick up traditionally red voters or certainly independents who are more conservative minded. But will they get the support of the party? Because the party itself seems, as you say, wedded to this ultra progressive ideology that they can't seem to shake. And so I wonder if they will even get the possibility to make waves in the upcoming presidential primaries for 2028. Tim, we are going to be back with Tim Donner, finding out just how red or blue the country really is after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.